run a fleet of steam locomotives which included 3 Canadian Pacific 462s, 3 Reading T1s, a nickel-plate Berkshire, and a C&O 484. He was the driving force behind the most successful steam excursions of all time, including the Golden Spike Centennial Limited and the American Freedom Train. He came very close to reintroducing a modern computer-controlled steam locomotive to oil-dependent America. Entrepreneur, steam engineer, patriot, showman par excellence. Whatever you call him, this man has brought the might and excitement of the steam locomotive to millions of Americans. Here is the fascinating story of the man who has been called America's greatest rail fan, Ross Rowland, giant of steam. Saturday, July 11th, 1943. At busy Union Station in Albany, New York, an impressionable 3-year-old boy named Ross E. Rowland, Jr. was about to begin a lifelong love affair with steam. Early that day, Ross's aunt and uncle, Tess and Tom Hennessy, picked him up and took him to the station to watch the New York Central's great steel fleet in action. America was embroiled in a great world war, but to this wide-eyed youngster, the parade of regal Hudsons and other steam power created a wonderful world of railroad sights and sound he would never forget.
I remember as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old during those 2 years in Albany, thinking how wonderful it would be to be that engineer up in that big engine running that engine, something I always wanted to do, and that desire which was born then has never left me.
In 1945, Ross and his family moved to Cranford, New Jersey. His dad worked for the Central Railroad of New Jersey, and he was being transferred to the railroad's New York City headquarters. 5-year-old Ross was apprehensive that he might be losing his Workley steam fix, but soon found out that his new home was only a short bike ride away from the Jersey Central's Cranford Roundhouse. For the next 9 years, Ross and his younger brother Bob spent every possible moment hanging around the place, getting to know the mechanics, hostlers, and locomotive engineers.
By, I would say, the 3rd or 4th year, 1948 or 49, which would have made me 8 or 9 years old, I had gained enough of their trust, and they had taught me enough that I was helping them clean fires and grease the locomotives, that kind of stuff. And then by the time I was 10 or 11, they had taught me enough and trusted me enough that, especially on bad weather days, they would send me out in the yard to get engine 805 or one of the Camelbacks and bring it into the house for service so that they didn't have to go out in the rain or the snow. So by 10 or 11 years old, I was, in the yard at least, I was running steam locomotives, which is something I always wanted to do and still do.
In 1957, at the age of 17, Ross landed a job as a runner on New York's Commodity Exchange, which eventually led to a lucrative career as a highly successful commodity futures broker. But Mr. Rowland never forgot his desire to become a steam engineer. One day in 1959, during a trip to the Jersey Shore, Ross stumbled across a little Shay-geared locomotive near the highway.
As we were driving down Route 9 in Freehold, I saw this small Shay steam engine live next to the highway, and of course I pulled over to find out what was going on, and I learned that it was a small group of volunteers who had activated this engine, and were running it up and down on a couple of 100 feet of track.
Ross got involved with the group and was instrumental in setting up the Pine Creek Railroad in nearby Allaire State Park. As part of the New Jersey Museum of Transportation, this little pike is still in operation today.
And I stayed active with them for 5 or 6 years and got to run the Shay engine weekends around our loop track, and we started carrying a lot of people. And it was fun, but quite honestly, 3 or 4 mile an hour on the Shay got to be a little boring. And in 1964, I read a newspaper article about a man who was intent on starting a short line railroad in the Flemington area. And I immediately called him on the phone. Bill Whitehead was his name, and got involved with his group and was able to help them secure the purchase of the Flemington branch of the Pennsylvania Railroad. Our mainstay engine at that time was number 60, a 280, from the Great Western Sugar Company, and a great little engine. That was my first mainline locomotive experience. But again, going back and forth the 5 miles each way from Ringo's to Flemington at 15 to 20 miles an hour was fun, but it got boring after a while. And it made me hungry to get out on the main line and be able to do 60 or 70 miles an hour. And that led into the Jersey Central experience.
With this in mind, in 1966, Ross approached the Jersey Central Railroad to discuss whether they would allow him to organize and market a series of steam-powered excursions. Rowland would provide a steam locomotive that met the CNJ's mechanical standards, an engine crew, and car hosts. The railroad would in turn rent him a number of passenger coaches and the use of their track for 2 October fan trips.
And much to my pleasant surprise, the railroad said yes and gave us a price for the use of the cars and the track that was very reasonable and a very reasonable insurance requirement. And so we set up the High Iron Company, and we assembled a really first-rate team of volunteers and ran our first excursions in October of 1966 from Jersey City, New Jersey to Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, using Nelson Blount's 127, a Canadian Pacific 462. Personally, it was a great thrill for me because I had the chance for the first time in my life to get out on the main line and actually operate a locomotive at 60, 70 mile an hour track speed. And I had the time of my life, and that made me hungry for more.
Locomotive 127 is a Class G5D 462 Pacific-type steam engine constructed for the Canadian Pacific Railroad in 1948 by the Canadian Locomotive Company. Originally numbered 1278, this modern locomotive was retired in the early 1960s and sold to F. Nelson Blount in May 1965. For the 1967 season, the High Iron Company expanded its schedule to 6 excursions, 1 per month from May through October. To pull these trains, Rowland leased 2 sister G5 Pacifics, numbers 1238 and 1286, from steam entrepreneur George Hart. Identical to the Pioneer 127, these engines double-headed twice on the August and September trips. The 1968 season was expanded to 9 excursions. It began with 2 winter trips from Ross's hometown of Cranford, New Jersey, to Ashley, Pennsylvania, on February 18th and 25th. Pacific's 1238 and 1286 were not available because they were on emergency loan to the city of Reading, Pennsylvania. The city's main heating plant had broken down, and the 2 steam engines were being used to help furnish heat to the central business district.